Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I am your host, Tracy Stuckrath, founder of Thrive Meetings and Events and the Eating at a Meeting podcast, which you're listening to right now. On this show, I talk to experts in all facets of food and beverage to understand how we can create safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for everyone. And this month, it's June, and it is Fresh Fruits and Vegetables Month. And it just so happens that one of my dear friends, least 10 years from the Atlanta Les Dames d'Escoffier chapter and just the Atlanta cooking community, just released 2 cookbooks that I'm so excited about on blueberries and strawberries. And 2 of blueberries are my absolute favorite. So I'm excited to introduce you to James Beard Award-winning cookbook author, Cynthia Graubart. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, Tracy. How are you?
I am good. Thank you very much. And just so you know, the books, and if you want to show them, Cynthia, it's Blueberry Love and Strawberry Love, which is perfect for how much I love both of them. There's the blueberry one. Oh, they're so good. And there's the strawberry one. Yay. And so yummy. I will post the link to both of those books where you can get them from Cynthia in a few minutes. But Cynthia, so I want you to dive into the books, but these are new. I say a new genre for you because you've done, slow cooking, you've done chicken, you've done Southern cooking. And so these are specific like dessert books. Is that right?
Yes. Well, actually, there are savory recipes in them too. So they are a combination, which actually made it really fun to write because it's pretty easy to come up with sweet recipes for fruit. But you have to kind of flip things around when you think about using them in savory dishes. And so that's what really made this a lot of fun. And they're really accessible books. They have common ingredients found in your regular grocery store. You don't need to make a special trip or make a special purchase. These are things that you can whip up, in the afternoon or in the evening, and you've got something delicious to eat in no time flat.
Well, and when I was skimming through both of them, trying to pick out what I wanted to make, they are all very simple recipes to make. And I love that because a lot of times, especially in the summertime, you don't want to be in the kitchen cooking heavy and getting hot and all of that.
Exactly. I think when I think of summertime cooking, I think of primarily assembling things. Now, I do have in the strawberry book, I have a strawberry cake that is to die for. And I always feel sorry for summer birthdays because they just don't seem to have the same feeling as a winter birthday does. And so this is a show-stopping cake. It takes a little bit of effort, but not a lot. And that's probably the most complicated one in the book. But most of them are really what I call doable recipes.
Awesome. Well, okay, before I forget, strawberry cake, you need to come visit me in New Bern because Ashley, the chef at Cypress Hall here in New Bern, North Carolina, his grandmother made him sign a non-disclosure agreement to get her strawberry cake recipe. And he serves it in his restaurant and he makes all of his employees sign the non-disclosure. So you need to come visit me and we need to go eat that cake and see how it compares.
I love a food road trip more than anything.
Okay, good. So one of the at the very beginning of both books, you tell a little bit of history about blueberries and strawberries, which I thought was really intriguing. And, blueberries, which I told you and I tell everybody, like you could fill my room with blueberries and I would eat my way out of them. But, well, the history of them, I mean, they are promulgated from the U.S. originally, right?
Right. So the wild blueberry is a native plant to North America. So you'll find them primarily in Maine. Maine's the number one producer.
Okay.
We'll find some in Michigan, and then on into Canada. And those are the original, that is 10,000 years old, those blueberries.
Wow.
They grow close to the ground and they have to be raked. And there's a great picture in the book of how blueberries are picked in Maine from these low straddling bushes, and their leaves turn crimson in the fall. And
wow.
Nothing's more gorgeous than a blueberry field in the fall. Well, I mean, after one filled with ripe blueberries, of course.
Right.
So they're an ancient food for us here in North America. And then a woman who was working for her father helped make the hybrid for the high bush blueberry. And so that's been around for almost 100 years or so, I guess.
Okay. Now, we see a lot of blueberries that are coming in the grocery store that are coming from Mexico. So is that which strand or that one is that?
So those are the larger hybrid.
Okay.
So the Maine blueberries are those teeny little ones. And generally speaking, we don't see them fresh because they don't travel well. So you have to travel to them, which is a great excuse to go to Maine.
Yes.
And so the ones that we typically buy in our grocery stores are the high bush variety, and they're larger, but no less tasty. They can be super delicious. Where you can find Maine blueberries, wild Maine blueberries, is in the freezer section. And I am on a mission, and have been for years, to get people to accept fresh frozen fruits and vegetables, because they are fantastic. And the way they've been picked and handled nowadays, they go straight into freezing. There's no time loss. There's no health loss, the nutrients of the berries. So I encourage people to try the wild Maine blueberries that are frozen. And I know that they can be used in almost all of the blueberry recipes in the book.
Well, and that was one of the things that I thought was interesting too, is that you said you could replace fresh with frozen easily in all of the recipes, except for the ones that potentially say don't.
Right. Yeah. So what you're looking for is where a lot of excess liquid would hinder the recipe.
Okay.
So that's really what you have to look for. So you can defrost them and drain them and use that grape juice to make a sauce or something like that, if you felt like you might be in dangerous territory with too much liquid.
Okay. Now, you said something that made me think one of the things that I thought was interesting as well from both books was that drying the blueberries can add so much flavor to your recipes.
Yes.
How does that work?
Well, if you think about it, a dried berry of any kind, a cup of fresh berries will have fewer berries in it. A cup of dried berries will have more. So
that makes sense.
Volume alone gets you there. What I found in this process was freeze-dried strawberries, and they are fantastic. And you put them in a food processor and you grind them up to a powder. Now, the downside is that dust sort of gets everywhere, so you kind of want to watch what you're doing there, be a little careful. But our commercial strawberries are many times nearly flavorless, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And if you add freeze-dried strawberries that you've put into a powder, you add that to virtually any recipe, you're going to get a kick up in strawberry flavor like you can't believe.
Okay. I like that idea because it is my local farmer, White's Farms, they've run out of their strawberries for the season. So I'm going to have to do that route, I think, if I want to add that flavor to it.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things about strawberries, again, that I thought was interesting that you said was that strawberries actually is not actually a berry.
It's not a berry.
What?
So if you think about it, a strawberry, all those little things on the outside of the berry, those are actually seeds. And so the berry is almost inside out. And so it's not a berry as we define berries, but we eat them and enjoy them in the same season as our other favorite berries.
All right. So I don't know why this just popped into my head, but years ago on one of the dating apps, some guy's like, what is it about blueberries that you love so much? And I'm like, okay, you're a little creepy because I'm like, I just love popping them in my mouth and eating them. But I mean, the juiciness and sometimes the tart, right? And what about it for you?
Yeah. So I love that too, because you never know what the next berry is going to taste like. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of fun. So you get a mixture, especially eating them out of hand. It's not the exact same taste for every bite.
Right.
They tend to meld if they're cooked. If you need to cook them in a sauce or something like that, then you're going to get a mono situation there. But there's also that little hesitation, the just that ever so slight toothiness to the skin. When you there's like that little pop. It's not big, but it makes it an interesting berry to eat. So there's things for your mouth to do.
Yeah, that is so true. Okay, so when I'm looking at your website and I'm looking at all of your books, and then I've cooked with you in Cook's Warehouse, and pretty much I think that's the only place I've cooked with you. But what is it about writing a cookbook that you find so much joy in versus, and is it different than teaching a class?
Very different, very different. So I love my career because it has so many different facets. I get to talk to people like you. I get to talk to people in a television audience. I get to teach classes. I speak and lecture, and I write books. And the book writing part is so interesting to me because especially a single subject. I loved writing these almost as much, actually a little more even than writing my chicken book, which is a single subject book, because it's a deep dive into one subject. And I love that. I love knowing everything about one thing. It's just really a fun research project. And I think that my mission in terms of cooking is to help people conquer their fear in the kitchen. I want people to get in the kitchen and cook. I want to be that little voice they hear in their head, or that little person sitting on their shoulder saying, "You can do this. This is okay. You can." There's a lot of room for trial and error. You can wing part of the recipes. Unless you're baking, there's really a lot of room in most recipes for substitutions. People are terrified of substitutions. And so I enjoy writing a book where I can communicate those feelings, like, you can do this. And, here's what you need to look for. If you're not sure if it's done, what you're looking for is this. And it may take between 5 and 6 minutes, rather than saying cook for 5 minutes, what does it look like? What does it smell like? What's the texture? All those other clues always can help you determine doneness, or when you're ready to move to the next step. And so I try to communicate those in my recipes to help build confidence.
Well, and that's really important because, you get a recipe and it says, until, 165 degrees. Well, that's all good and well. What if my oven is not calibrated or my thermometer is not calibrated and I'm going to overcook it because it's just not right? And I think, and that adds into all the other senses, because we eat with our eyes, but we also eat with our mouths and our ears because of the sautéing noises and
right. Does it sizzle?
right.
When the sizzling stops, all of those things. You mentioned the oven. As far as I'm concerned, the oven is the most evil piece of equipment in the kitchen. No two ovens are alike. I don't care how much you spent on your oven, the temperature is wrong. And the best thing you can do is buy an oven thermometer. You can get them in the grocery store, and they're less than $10. And you stick that in there, you will be shocked at how off your oven is. I recommend that to people who say they don't bake because nothing ever turns out right. I'm going to lay money on the table. It's their oven and not them.
Right. Wow.
They don't know that.
Well, and my mom's, the external grid of her oven, I realized was out, and she was like, my food's not cooking. And I'm like, we need to get that. So we had to get that replaced. And that's a big deal.
I had to buy a new double oven, wall oven during COVID, because I was testing books, and my ovens are 20 degrees off.
Wow.
And that's huge.
A big deal. Yeah.
For baking. And of course, I'm developing recipes that other people need to follow. So I have to be really accurate with my temperature. But, something so simple as an oven thermometer can really, and it hangs on the little rack of the little spindle of the rack, and it's out of the way. You don't have to worry about it taking up space.
I'm so glad that you said that it's like evil, because it kind of is sometimes. So I just love what, you cook, and we've cooked at Atlanta Food and Wine Festival, and Charleston Food and Wine Festival. I know you do that every year as well. But what was your first memory that made you really love cooking and got you into this route of for this career?
So I never knew you could learn to cook. I know that sounds crazy. My mom was a career woman, and she put a pound of ground meat on the counter to defrost and told me, turn it into something when I got home from school. Or it was going to be meatloaf. I had to turn it into something else if I didn't want meatloaf. And I didn't want meatloaf. So I cooked some as I was growing up, but I had a relatively limited exposure to food. And I actually began my career as a television producer. And along the way, I was the producer for Natalie Dupree. I got Natalie Dupree her first PBS series.
Wow.
Nationwide television series. And first nationwide program to come out of the state of Georgia, by the way. And so as I was working with her, I discovered, you can actually be taught how to do this. And there are books that teach techniques and things like that. So that opened up my world. In college, people introduced me to things I'd never eaten before, and that was really cool. And I did some cooking in college, not a whole lot of experimentation. But then once I worked on Natalie's show, I said, okay, I'm really into this. And then I wrote my first cookbook because when my first child was born, my son, my husband expected us to keep entertaining like we had. And so I said to him, one day I'm going to write a book called The One-Armed Cook. And I went on to write that book because it is a challenge to cook with a baby on your hip. And so
I can only imagine. I haven't had one, but yes.
It is challenging, Then you have a second one and they're on your leg, So anyway, so that began my journey.
Okay, so do you love, because again, like I said, you've done chicken and you've done slow cooking in pots, and now you've done berries, and I know you've done southern vegetables. Do you have a favorite food that you love to cook?
It's such a hard question. It's almost like asking who your favorite child is. I have to say that that blueberries are just part of my soul. We've been going to Maine for 25 years every summer and spending the summer there. And so I am really attached to Maine, and a wild Maine blueberry fresh in season is just my idea of heaven.
Okay, you and I are now even more best friends because I'm right there with you. I have a blueberry farm 10 minutes from my house.
Oh my gosh.
And they're the tall ones. They're so yummy. They're so good. Yeah. Okay, so what 4 ingredients are must-haves in your kitchen and should probably be must-haves in anyone's kitchen?
Let's see. I think the first thing I would say is a great vinegar, whatever kind of vinegar that you like, because it's really great to have an acid to cook with.
Okay.
It's great for deglazing a pan, which helps to start a pan sauce. It's great in a marinade. So I would say a good vinegar would be one of those. I think keeping self-rising flour on hand is just a necessity for me. And it's already has the leavening built in, so you don't have to worry about whether or not your baking powder is fresh. Because some people only use baking powder at Christmas, and then that's it.
Right.
So like a good self-rising flour. I would say, 4.
Just 2 more.
Just 2 more. Oh, okay. I think some kind of favorite oil is also important. Whether that's olive oil or coconut oil, whatever oil is your go-to, that's really important to have on hand. And then I think you need salt.
I was just going to say that's, and okay, on that note, and I know we're not talking about blueberries and strawberries at the moment, but we will get back to blueberry love and strawberry love. My mom's like, don't put too much salt on there. But like you and Gina Berry and, Virginia Willis is like, salt is necessary for flavor.
It is so necessary for flavor. Now, if you're not restricted by diet, and fortunately, my blood pressure runs on the low side, so I can do with salt whatever I want to, and I feel grateful. But people don't salt their food enough. People say in a restaurant, why does the food taste so good? Well, because they use fat and salt, and those are 2 key flavor items. So,
yeah, I mean, and it's just for the flavor. It's not adding way too much, like overly salty. Okay. So on that note, this reminds me of the other day, my mom was eating watermelon and she put salt on her watermelon.
I love salt on my watermelon.
Now, can you do that with blueberries and strawberries? Should you do that? Or is that just a whole nother thing?
I don't find that it enhances the flavor of berries.
Okay.
Now, if you roast the strawberries,
a
little bit of salt on them is great. And that it helps draw out some of the juices and caramelized and it really helped with flavor. So I would say in that case, and then of course, when a recipe calls for it, that has a lot of other ingredients, it's there for a flavor and another kind of action in the recipe. So I do not salt a bowl of berries.
Okay. To me, that would ruin the bowl of blueberries. So one of the other things that I loved in the books were that you also had drinks, and because we talked sweets, but we talked savory. And so let's talk drinks and savory. And what does that mean with berries?
So one of the oldest drinks in colonial America is the shrub.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So you soak berries in vinegar and you mash the berries up. You leave them to sit covered in the refrigerator. And then you take them out and you drain all that liquid into a jar. And that is your shrub. I love to just cut some with some club soda for a bubbly drink. I love mixing it in iced tea. It gives a little sharp taste to the iced tea, which I adore. So I would say that shrubs are really, really fun.
That's not like doing simple syrup, right? That's a whole different thing.
That's a different thing. So, and making a simple syrup with berries is a wonderful thing to do because it becomes a flavored cocktail ingredient. So anytime you have a cocktail that calls for simple syrup and you think that a blueberry flavor would go with it or a strawberry flavor, make one of those berry simple syrups. You just add the berries to the regular recipe for simple syrup, and and it boils up, and you cool it down, and mashing the berries in the cooking process, and strain it, and it's glorious. It just really adds a great flavor. I have a bourbon, blueberry, and mint muddle in the blueberry book. That is a fabulous summer cocktail.
That my dad loves blueberries and my dad loves bourbon, so maybe I should do that.
A match made in heaven.
Yeah. And there's a blueberry martini in here, and wow. Okay, so blueberry and horseradish?
Yeah, hold on one second though. I got to show this.
Okay. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Yes.
You want one?
I do, but I want a mocktail because I'm not drinking anymore.
That's okay. Have a mocktail. And actually, that's why these syrups are so important, and these shrubs, because they just completely open up the world of tasty drinks without alcohol.
Well, and I'm glad, because we just need to teach some bartenders that, because I'm like, how can you do a mocktail? Oh yeah, I think I can. And I'm like, okay, you need to learn how to make mocktails.
Exactly. And there are some great resources that have come out this year.
Yeah.
Some terrific cocktail books that are non-alcoholic. They're wonderful.
Okay, so blueberries and strawberries and pairing them with savory dishes. Is there different types of food that blueberries go better with and then strawberries go better with? How do you manage or decide that?
Really fun to experiment with. I find that blueberries really go well with cheeses.
Okay.
And, so they make great dips. And that's a fun way to use blueberries. And strawberries, for savory things, they make great sauces, wonderful in sauces. So those are two primary ways to use them in a savory recipe.
Okay. And then where did I see, I'm scrolling through the index here, looking at it, but I saw horseradish, because I do love horseradish as well.
Horseradish. That is a great dip. I want to get, that is the wild blueberry, horseradish, and blue cheese spread.
Oh, wow.
And it's just that horseradish. I love horseradish in any form. I just adore it. And
I do.
I think it's because I need to clear my sinuses.
It totally does that.
So here's the spread.
That looks so good.
And it is so delicious. And what's fun about it is it's so unexpected. So when you serve it to people, they go, "What?" And they eat it. So it's blue cheese and cream cheese and grated white prepared horseradish, from the jar. You could also grate your own if you grow horseradish. Mm-hmm. You always want to taste it because horseradish varies in intensity.
Yes.
So we're used to it being mixed in big batches. So we're getting, a single high note for that heat. Mm-hmm. But when you grow one, you're going to want to taste it to see how much is appropriate. Scallion, salt and pepper, fresh or frozen wild blueberries. Now, if you use the frozen ones in this one, it will turn it more purple.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with that. but just know that it does make a color difference in this.
Okay.
And then I put some walnuts in it because I like that little bit of crunch from a nut. Yeah.
And okay, so and talking about nuts and I guess blue cheese as well. So as you know, I talk all about dietary needs. And I know that in each of the books, there's definitely a gluten-free recipe. Mm-hmm. All of the recipes are vegetarian, but we were talking before the show, we could easily replace, because the recipes are so simple, you could easily replace or leave out the walnuts or change the milk to almond milk, or right? Is that
absolutely? And this is what I hope that people will take home, and that is that when a recipe is well written for a wide audience, there should be room for substitution. And that's how you make a recipe your own. It's not, don't think about it as only being because you have a dietary need. Maybe it's an allergy or something like that. Think of it as your creativity. So you're going to make that recipe your own by using pecans, or you're going to make it your own by using oat milk or almond milk or a vegan cheese, all kinds of things that can be done. And these kinds of recipes, specifically in these two books, are very substitution friendly.
Okay, good. Yeah. And I was telling you before the show that I love Cup for Cup, especially their pie crust, but I do use their Cup for Cup because it's got the xanthan gum in it, which for everybody to know, that's that self-rising, that helps that rising aspect of it. But their pie crust rocks. And then the King Arthur gluten-free cake mix is really the box cake mix is really, really good. So I'm sure that we could easily, it's not making it completely from scratch, but it's a good option.
But that's true. There's no reason why you can't do that. And don't let anybody shame you or that's the other thing. People tend to feel like they're being judged. And and I don't want people to feel that way. Look at it as it's your creativity.
And that's okay. So do you think that creativity, well, in baking, it's much more of a science than it is in cooking savory dishes, correct?
Totally. Yes.
So it does matter with your liquids in your dry goods and making that mixture work right. But
there's science involved.
Yes. And who's the dom in Atlanta that was so science?
Shirley Corrier.
Yes.
If you don't own Shirley Corrier's books, you must own them.
She's so science. It's awesome.
If you ever want to know why a recipe does or doesn't work, she has the answer.
That's amazing. And she's doing well?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's see. Going back to the dietary needs, and you kind of answered this a second ago, because you shouldn't be shamed by creating your recipe your own. But so, one question that I ask everybody is, what does a safe and inclusive food and beverage experience mean to you, and a sustainable one?
I want it to be a judgment-free zone.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to be able to be nourished with things that can be satisfying to them without it being considered weird or different or a pain for the caterer, or that's not hospitality.
No. Yeah, I agree with you. And I was reading an article and somebody's like, my need is not special. I still have the same needs of eating or of walking. It's just I need an adjustment. Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that I find interesting too is, what, as a cookbook author, as a chef, as a teacher, what do you want people to know about what you do, or you wish they knew about what you do?
It takes real dedication. It's hard. It's hard work. I mean, it's absolutely fun, or I wouldn't do it. I love what I do, but it's actually real work. When I'm in the kitchen creating recipes, there's the science part, there's the technical part, there are details. Yeah, it's fun to create a recipe, but you have to write every single thing down, and it has to be recorded correctly. And then if you need to test it again, what aspect are you changing? And so there's a lot of math involved and a lot of science involved, even though it's a creative endeavor.
That's it's so true, because you can't just, when there's so many recipes you find, you're like, this doesn't really work. But I think the one thing with all of your cookbooks is that you and Virginia Willis, I know, are like, you test and you have people test them, and it's not just you, and it's before you actually put that cookbook together.
The biggest tip I can give to your viewers and listeners is that know your source. Anybody can grab a recipe off the internet, but please consider where you're getting that recipe from. Vet your providers. Use a trusted source so that you don't waste your time or your money or your effort in a bad recipe. There are more bad recipes than good on the internet. So follow people that are known entities in the fields that you're interested in. Use their recipes, buy their books, or check their books out from the library. But you will save yourself a lot of grief if you get recipes from really good sources. You are so far ahead of the game at that point.
Well, yeah, because recipe testing costs a lot of money.
It does. Yeah.
And it blows my mind. If you think about it, and this is kind of a big tangent here, but with chefs and hotel caterers or hotelier chefs and catering companies, to come up with these new recipes that they've fumbled a lot and, thrown a lot out, and they're like, oh my God, that doesn't taste well at all. And same thing with your cookbooks.
I was speaking with a colleague this week, in fact, and she was working on a recipe, and she was on test number 5, and it still wasn't working. And I told her, I said, when I get to 5, I accept the message from the gods that I need to move on. And but she has a little bit different approach than I do, and has a little bit more of a sciencey approach. And what she was doing did have some chemical reactions that would help it work out. So she was going to keep at it, which I completely admire. But all those ingredients,
right?
Some of them, are perfectly edible, and you hope you've cultivated really good neighbors that like tasting your rejects. But it's a sizable investment.
Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna 2 final questions for you. Do you have a favorite recipe from both books, or are all of them your favorite?
Oh, it's so hard to pick.
You said the strawberry cake earlier, but
the strawberry cake's wonderful. There is a chocolate roll in the strawberry book that I was so tickled with how that turned out. And it looks really showy, but it's not difficult. And the directions are really clear because I want people to make it. And so that's a great recipe. I have so many favorites. In the blueberry book, there's a blueberry onion jam that's served as a sauce, and that is to die for. You want to keep that around and use it on everything. It's so good.
Okay, awesome. And I've made made another jam with never mind, forget it. I've made jams to put on pork, and they're so delicious. So I will definitely, that was it. I sauteed the onions with it, and it was just yummy. So I will definitely try that one.
Good.
Okay, so my final question is, if you could prepare a meal for anyone, living or dead, or who would it be, and what would you make?
I'm going to be really sappy here.
Okay.
My mom's been gone for a very long time, and she never got to see me in my career.
Oh,
I would want to make dinner for my mom so she could see.
oh, I love that.
And my favorite meal from my childhood, and also the main dishes, one by which chefs should be judged, is a roast chicken. And roast chicken and green beans and mashed potatoes is just such a great childhood memory of mine. And I think I would make it for her.
That's awesome. That's so sweet. Cynthia Graubart, thank you so much.
This was so much fun.
It was so much fun. And I'm so glad I got to see you face to face.
Yes.
If not in person.
Yes.
So everyone, this is Chef Cynthia Graubart. She's an James Beard award-winning cookbook author. She has 2 new books out, Strawberry Love and Blueberry Love, with some delicious savory and sweet and cocktails and mocktails for all of us to enjoy. But check her out, all of her books. She's got quite a few books out there that we can enjoy. And I will make sure that in the chat that the link is there for you, for everybody to get those, Cynthia. So thank you so much for joining me.
That's a pleasure.
And this was the Eating at a Meeting podcast. And you can find us on all podcast platforms. Please share it out with everyone you know. We talk about how to create safe, inclusive, and sustainable food and beverage experiences for everyone. And until next time, stay safe and eat well. Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.